Hi, everyone, and welcome. We'll get started in just a moment. Thank you for being with us today. Well, welcome all. I am Michael Morella, Managing Editor at U.S. News and World Report. We're here today to explore the intersection of education and workforce partnerships and to probe into how innovative new learning models and approaches are transforming the future of learning and work. You can find more details about today's speakers, as well as upcoming and past events focused on education, health, and more at usnews.com/events. There, you can also sign up for updates from the US News Live team about future programs. And before we get started, just a couple of quick notes. We are recording video of this webinar, and we'll be making that available on demand for registrants. Look for a follow-up email from our team. We're also simulcasting from the US News Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube pages. Now, I'm very pleased to introduce our panel of guest experts. With us today are Dr. Amy Burkert, Vice Provost for Education at Carnegie Mellon University, Kimberly Merritt, Vice President and Deputy for the Learning Enterprise at Arizona State University, Scott Shireman, Global Head of Coursera for Campus, and Dr. Constance Yahl, Senior Vice Chancellor for Educational and Innovation at Northeastern University in Boston. Now I'll turn it over to our moderator, but before I do, if you in the audience have questions, we do ask that you please type them into the Q&A in Zoom on your screen. We'll review those and try to give voice to them over the course of the hour. Now I will turn the microphone over to our moderator, Liz Whitehead, Managing Editor of Events at US News, to lead the conversation. Liz?
Thanks very much, Michael, and thank you all for joining us. This is a fascinating time for higher ed institutions as they reimagine how they approach education and students in ways that were unthinkable 20 years ago. I'm looking forward to the discussion with our outstanding panel, all of whom are helping lead these changes at their institutions. I'd like to start off by asking each of you to share a bit about yourselves, your role, and whom your institution serves. Connie, can you start us off?
Sure, Liz, I'd be happy to. And thanks so much for hosting this panel. This is just, I'm thrilled to be here and really looking forward to the conversation. What I thought I'd do to give you a sense of what I do is to first say a couple things about Northeastern. So that's the context in which I do what I do. So a couple sentences about Northeastern. Our original home and campus is based in Boston, but we are also a global university. So we have 13 campuses around the world. And we just in the last couple of years have also been working on a couple of mergers. So we will soon be admitting students in Oakland, in London, as well as in Boston, which is quite exciting for us. We are an R1 institution, which means we are also a deep research-based institution, as well as an undergraduate, master's, and grad program institution. And we have a new academic plan that came out last year, sort of coming out of COVID, that's made it really clear to all of us that our mission is to have impact in the world. It's simply, that's it, that we are an institution that exists to have impact in the world. And what we're most known for is co-op. Co-op is really an example of experiential learning. So our pedagogical approach to everything we do, what's in our DNA is experiential learning. We believe deeply that to have impact in the world and to really have our students become those folks who are deeply engaged in having impact in the world, that from day one when they join us, they need to be out in the world. And so all of our learning is organized both around not only high quality academic courses and research, it is also organized about having our students out in the work world, out in the global community, and out in their local community. We work really tightly with mayors and cities and community-based organizations. And we do that both through our residency model with all of our campuses, through online and through hybrid. And so what that means for me in having the privilege of being at Northeastern is that my remit around educational innovation is around experiential learning. We are constantly working on innovating on how we really integrate the deep disciplinary and research-based knowledge that our university is well known for with the work that our students are doing out in the world, whether it's with co-op, working with employers, working with community-based organizations, or working globally. And so that's really the core of what I do at Northeastern, is I'm constantly working on that next iteration of how we want to think about experiential learning and how we want to think about it in a work-based learning context.
That's great. Thank you, Connie. Amy, can you talk about your role at Carnegie Mellon?
Sure. Like Constance, I'll start with a bit of an overview. So Carnegie Mellon, like Northeastern, is an R1 private research university, and we do have campuses as well as education and research partnerships spanning the globe. Our university was founded actually itself a partnership between the industrial philanthropist Andrew Carnegie and the local government in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And the belief that we were founded on is that education, real world and grounded education, is the path to a better future for individuals and communities. So as we've evolved as an institution, that has remained a part of our DNA. And certainly we are a place where a lot of partnerships take place. We believe that this learning by doing is important. And as was highlighted, real world problems are often interdisciplinary in nature. They are collaborative in the ways in which we approach them in the real world context. So we really try to model that for our students. As early as the 1920s, Carnegie Mellon was forwarding a Carnegie plan that advanced a notion of a liberal professional approach to engineering education. And that was taken up as a national model for advancing the core skills, but also these broader competencies as an integrated and interrelated rather than separate elements of an education. Today, Carnegie Mellon, we have around 15,000 degree-seeking students representing 100 countries. And these students are evenly split roughly between undergraduate and graduate degree seekers. We also have about 300 different areas of focus, and we serve thousands of learner populations spanning the K through 12 space to professional and executive offerings to lifelong learning populations, both through online and in person. As Connie mentioned, my role as Vice Provost is to be able to enable and support through the partnership with our President, Provost, Deans, and colleagues in academic and administrative units. We want to advance student learning, educational excellence and innovation, and work together to support and empower every student so that they can thrive not only during their time with us at CMU, but as they work to achieve their academic, professional, and personal goals. Another example of a core principle of our mission is this learning by doing. And we've done a number of different and new approaches, including innovative models of undergraduate research and some embedded partnerships with doctoral research activities that we are aiming to prepare our students, not just for the skills and the jobs of today, but really future skilling them for the needs of tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to these conversations. Thank you.
Yeah, we look forward to getting to the details of some of these programs. Kim, can you talk about ASU and your role there?
I can. Hi, everyone. It looks like I'm in great company, all folks thinking about these things. I am at Arizona State University, also an R1 university. For us, our charter is really thinking about not who we exclude, but who we include and how they succeed. And so for us, that's really thinking about all the ways that not only those of us who come to the university get a degree thrive, but also how we can affect the broader community as well. With that in mind, we've actually reorganized the university recently into 3 key focus areas. One is our academic enterprise, which is focused on degree-seeking students, those that have come to us forever to get their degrees that we've served well, and we will continue to do that. We have our knowledge enterprise, which really keeps us on track with that R1 designation, thinking about how we can research and help solve the world's problems. And then learning enterprise, which is how I'll kind of kick off an introduction to myself. Learning enterprise is our new arm of the university, focused on how we bring all of our assets, all of the brain trust that is our ASU faculty and schools to the world. And much like you mentioned, Amy and Constance, thinking through how that happens by getting into high schools and supporting high schools with the resources and assets that they need, thinking about how we can upskill and reskill the workforce and help support both Arizona and the world in that need. So as we think about our broader mission, it's really thinking about not only the traditional student that comes to our university, but really how we can broaden that impact and that reach and rethink about the role of a public university in our society. And I come to that work. I started as a teacher. I taught in Los Angeles for 12 years in a multitude of places. Love that work. And then decided to move into starting schools. We saw quite a few gaps in access and really focused on thinking about what were those gaps in access and how could we start schools that really address that, thinking about things that you're all talking about here, project-based learning, active learning, starting in a high school space, and then started realizing that there's some work to do in the college space as well. So headed over to ASU and have spent the last 3 years thinking about how those worlds combine.
That's great. Thank you, Amy. Scott, you also, like Amy, have kind of a dual perspective. So if you can talk a little bit about what you're doing at Coursera, but also perhaps the background that you brought into your current role that helps inform some of your ideas.
Great, thanks, Liz. So my name is Scott Shireman, and I'm the global head of Coursera for Campus. As Liz alluded to, though, my background is actually in higher education. Prior to joining Coursera, I spent about 10 years at UC Berkeley, and before that, 12 years at Northwestern University at the Kellogg School of Management. So what I'm really passionate about, having been fortunate enough to work at these really elite universities, I know really what universities can do so well. And now that I'm at Coursera, having this different vantage point of what industry can do well. And can we bring those two together? Can we partner with universities to bring some of the best of what's happening in industry to really do something magical, something transformative for our students? That's really what I'm passionate about. How Coursera sort of fits in that, many people know us as, the MOOC platform from 10 years ago. And that's where we started, partnering with really good universities to deliver their content directly to users all over the world. But about 5 years ago, we realized there's actually big demand for this content in corporate America as well, all over the world in industry. So we started partnering with companies. That's really given us a really good understanding of what are the skills that industry is actually looking to develop in their workforce and what are the skills they're looking to hire for out of universities. And now in the last few years with Coursera for Campus, we're looking to close that loop, close that triangle, and actually take what we've learned in industry back to universities to really serve students at universities well. So that's really what I'm motivated, and I think we'll have an opportunity to talk more about that as we go along. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you very much. I'd like to actually do a sampling of some of the programs that we've talked about before we broaden the discussion even more. And Connie, can you talk a little bit about the co-op program at Northeastern, the range of partnerships it embraces, how students engage with it, and how you see it working as a talent development pathway? You're still muted. There we go.
Yep, still muted. Thanks, Liz. So co-op is the experiential learning offering that we are most well known for. And just to say, we have a whole set of other offerings, whether they're internships, apprenticeships, community engaged teaching and research opportunities, global. Co-op, though, is something that over 96%, I want to say all of our students do, or 96% of our students do at least one co-op. Couple things to know about co-op is it's a 6-month-long relationship with the student and their employer. So they are not in school at this time. They step out. They go and work for 6 full months with an employer. And we found that 6-month period to be a really critical one, because it's not the project that you get with an internship, but it is our students are embedded in a company. They are there as workers and they're on teams doing work. And so generally what our students do is they come in, they take in their first year, beginning of their second semester, they take a co-op prep course, because we find that the preparation and the way that we engage a student around co-op is as important as the co-op. So they have a whole semester-long prep experience. They then get placed in a co-op. They then come back and we do a whole set of reflections and work with them on how that co-op experience was. The majority of our students, 96% of our students do one co-op, 78% of them do at least 2 co-ops. We find that as we talk with employers about how our students are doing, and when they hire them, the majority of our students are then hired after co-op by their last employer, is that it generally, they need a year of experience, a year to 18 months. And so we really encourage them to do at least 2 co-ops. In fact, many times when they do that first co-op, they're learning what they don't want to do as much as they are learning what they do want to do. In order to make this work, every student has a co-op coordinator. And that co-op coordinator is also in deep relationship with the company. So we are building relationships with each of our companies. We've got over 3,000 corporate partners. We're placing more than 6,000 students every semester in co-ops. And our co-op coordinators are tracking those students, supporting them throughout the entire experience, and building a deep relationship with the company, because they are the bridge for the student into the company and for the company back to the student. So we actually, in order to support co-op, have quite a significant, we've been doing this for over 100 years, have quite a significant infrastructure that enables us to really support these co-ops, and they're across every sector. So we have, on the Boston campus, we have over 9 colleges. We have a College of Science, we have College of Arts, Media, and Design, we have a College of Engineering. They all have co-ops. And so we have co-ops across just about every sector you can imagine, so that our students are having multiple experiences and are able to be in just about any sector they want to be in. And that gives us entree and conversation with just about every corporate partner you can imagine in each different sector. And so that's the sort of the overarching. We also, just 2 other things, we do co-op in our master's program, and we do co-op in our PhD programs, so that our graduate programs are all grounded in also the problems of industry and the problems of the areas that these students want to work in.
That's fabulous. Kim, ASU also has quite a broad array of programs to engage students. And I want to get to ASU local later in our discussion, but could you talk a bit about your apprenticeship program, and how does it align with your degree programs and local employers?
Yeah, I think one of the things you just said is really an important distinction there. How do our internship programs or our work-based learning programs align with our degree programs? And I think we have to start thinking about it as not just how do they align, but how are they built together? How do you think about degree programs in a way that embeds this type of work-based learning as part of the degree? And so we were awarded an $8 million One Workforce grant from the US Department of Labor, and it's really to rethink how we develop degree programs so that they embed this type of work-based learning as part of it. That way, when you are leaving with your degree, you're not just leaving with a degree and then hoping to go get your first job and, fingers crossed that resume works with your degree on it. You're already leaving with industry recognized credentials, and you have a permanent job placement in line with your degree. So that's really the core focus here. And we're also really thinking about what are the needs for society over in the coming years. So we're really focused right now on advanced manufacturing, cybersecurity, and IT. And these are all places we know that industry and workforce are looking for real humans to fill the seats that they have. And if we don't think about training in line with our degrees, then we're not really preparing students for the degree. Our WP Carey School of Business and our Fulton Schools of Engineering, as well as our new College of Interdisciplinary Arts, are all leading the charge here, but they're working with companies like Infosys and Pipeline AZ to really rethink this together. Another key focus for me on this is the idea that we're not just designing these degrees and these opportunities in a silo. We're really thinking about how we embed our workforce partners. As you know, Arizona economy has grown quite a bit in the last few years. How do we embed all these new partners and all of these new industries into what we're doing so that we know and our students know that what they're getting is relevant for them? Constantine, you talked about a lot of kind of cool ways that we can do this. We don't think there's one way to do it. So we've really thought about in this program how to create different types of touch points for students. We have simulated work experiences where if you haven't seen Dreamscape yet, and we'll be moving in this direction in the near future, how do we think about really creating a simulated work experience that is top notch and allows access to lots of folks in different places in a way that they might not be able to access in a personalized way, if not for technology. We have boot camps, which are intensive short-term trainings. We have key internships, a train to hire program, a pre-apprenticeship, a full-on registered apprenticeship. And when you think about these things, I think the key here is that every student needs something slightly different. And we don't want to have one prescribed way for them to get that experience. Someone who's working every day, all day, and has kids at home, that would be me currently, would not be able to stop everything I'm doing to learn a new skill, but I might have in my foresights that I want to do something else. So maybe a boot camp or a different type of experience might be right for me, but someone who does have the space or time or maybe not the right opportunity for them right now could embed themselves deeply into the actual day-to-day workforce. And so whatever is right for our students is really the key here, is how to create that menu of opportunity to make sure that they get what they need, when they need it, how they need it.
And that's very helpful. Amy, if you want to also pick up on any of Connie's and Kim's points, but as you talk about CMU and you have a really robust internship program and also intensive capstone projects. If you want to touch on those, would be great.
I think that's great. Thank you, Liz. I do appreciate the framing around that this isn't just an add-on, but this is integral to what we're trying to deliver for our students' experience. And there are lots of ways to do that. But one of the things that I wanted to highlight is the enrolled student being involved with their faculty and having it as a requirement of their curriculum. So in many of our academic programs, both at the undergraduate level and in the professional masters, there are required capstone projects that are faculty driven and facilitated, but are also done in direct partnership with corporate partners, a number of community-based organizations, government partners. And these bring many features because it happens during the academic year while they're still with us on our campus. And we're actually bringing these leaders to the classroom, to the project rooms where they're working with our teams of students. And there are many features of this structure and the goals that I think make them particularly valuable for student learning and for our partners. It does require the application and synthesis of foundational knowledge and skills across the degree program, which is really valuable in program assessment. It puts the student in real-world learning context through the data, the topics, the tools, and the people that they actually get to be thinking and doing with. Unlike many typical internships, they do get to work with the leaders in many of these companies where the thorniest problems that they are facing, they're bringing not just to our students, but to our students and faculty and staff to work together with their leadership. It does allow for the development and demonstration of these important competencies and 21st century skills, such as communication and collaboration that I know was referenced in terms of what we hear from our corporate partners and what they're hoping to make sure every student gets practice and facility with. Our partners are actually able to then develop cutting-edge solutions and out-of-the-box ideas, as well as it's important for talent acquisition and understanding. They get to see a much broader portfolio than they would in a standard internship type of program, and they get to see the students from a lot of different perspectives and diverse views. The experiential learning as courses can also be valuable. We do have, particularly in our graduate populations, a number of international students in these areas, and they can gain this real-world experience without some of the challenges that they may face in the internship seeking arena. Our partners do get to work with students also without having to have the infrastructure of hiring and supervising, as was noted. And finally, they do lead to multi-channel engagement with our university, our departments, through not just this capstone activity, but research collaborations, executive education that is tailored to their environment, and sponsored summer programs. It is something that is very important to our alumni in these programs. They often serve as a bridge to their companies and are very keen on being that conduit to opportunity, both for our students and for their companies. So it starts a great process of engagement. In the internship realm, I will just add that we've started, particularly during the pandemic, but we already had a program looking at new models of scaling undergraduate research and faculty-led projects. And in doing that during the pandemic, when many traditional internships were canceled, we saw our faculty working with community partners, corporate partners, to really develop important experiential learning summer projects for our students. And we've been assessing these along some of our designed core competencies and looking to see ways in which this allows for access and scalability beyond just the traditional approaches that some of our populations have more difficulty taking up. So I will stop there, but lots of parallels between some of what we've heard with others' offerings as well.
Thank you. Scott, so Coursera has launched a new initiative with colleges and universities called Career Academy. Can you talk about what's the idea behind it, how you see it complementing the core curriculums of your university and college partners, and what you hope to accomplish for students?
Yeah, and first off, let me just say it's really encouraging to hear my fellow panelists talk, right? I mean, these programs are just sound amazing and just such a good thing for students. And I think these programs, we'd all agree, are very difficult to build and to scale. And I think this is an area where we think at Coursera, we can help because we have those relationships with industry, right? We're able to see the skills that industry is looking to develop. And so we had this idea, we went to our partners and, Google, IBM, Facebook, these, great companies. And we talked to their HR about what are the jobs that are really in demand right now? What are the digital jobs that you're looking to hire that students coming out of university could really move into, right? And we identified those roles, and then we worked with subject matter experts in those companies, right? To build out the content, to teach the skills, and to also do the assessment so that those companies would feel confident putting their brand on a certificate certifying that a student has those skills, right? So the idea was, if a student wants to be a social media marketer, who better than Facebook subject matter experts to teach them the skills to be a social media marketer? The same with IBM and cybersecurity, with Google and IT project management, IT support. We have about 20 of these at launch. And so we package this into something we call Career Academy that we want to offer to universities via partnership with universities, something they can brand, offer to their students as this university's Career Academy that will help students see these are the digital jobs that are in demand when you graduate. Here's a professional certificate from a company like Google or IBM, Meta, Facebook, that's going to teach you the skills, going to give you a certificate that's going to help you land that job. The other interesting thing we did is we have something called guided projects, which we curated for each one of these job roles, where these are really hands-on learning experiences. They're about 1 to 2 hours in length, but they're really focused around solving a specific problem with a specific tool. Right. And so we partnered with industry to understand what are the kind of problems, what are the tools. Then we built these out so that students, not only are they learning the material like in a theoretical way, not only they're getting the certificate and the credential, but they're also doing these projects that we think when they actually get into interviews and they're actually being, hired, they'll have these stories they can tell about, hey, I used this project. Here's how I got the data. Here's how I cleaned it up. Here's how I did my analysis. Here's how I did the visualization. That'll really make them good candidates for these jobs. So that's pretty much the package. And as I said, it's not something we're trying to go around universities, because I know all too well, like universities bring so much to this, right? They bring so much when you talk about community and the coaching, critical thinking, all of these things. But we think we can be a last mile career training on top of what the university offers to really help the student get that first job. So that's Career Academy. We're really excited about it, and the response so far has been really great from universities that we've talked to about it.
I think what's particularly exciting about both the developments in experiential learning and these new learning models is that it's like a win-win for so many stakeholders, communities, different underserved communities, and so on. And I'd like to different professional groups that haven't benefited by having these close ties to universities before, universities in a way that's available now. Connie, I'd like to start with one and then go through to all of you on different programs that you're working on. Northeastern has a network of campuses through which the university has formed close connections with local economies and businesses, and it complements the local colleges. It doesn't compete. Can you talk about what you're doing in these areas? Oh, mute. You have to unmute again.
I keep doing that. It's only been, what, 3 years of COVID. Yeah, let me give you some really concrete examples of what we're doing. And I couldn't agree more with Scott in terms of how hard it is to do this, particularly for higher ed institutions with sort of 100 years of history of doing things in a particular way. Because at the core of any of this work for us is really deeply understanding partnerships. And that whether it's a partnership between a university and Coursera, or a partnership with a local community or a business partner, in the grand scheme of things, that's a relatively new skill set for a university. And so to have impact in the world, we can only do that through these deep partnerships. Where we are located, we consider ourselves to have a social contract with the local community and with the site that we are located in. And so as we think about our mission of impact in the world, we have to work closely with them to understand what impact means for them and what are the core problems of that community. So a really nice example is we have a RU Institute, one of our campuses in Portland, Maine. We spent an enormous amount of time with the governor of Maine, the funders of Maine, the local universities in Maine. Their core problem is that they need to revitalize their economy. And so the question is, how can we help to revitalize the economy of Maine as a real collaborative partner? Maine has a great set of universities that provide undergraduate education. We don't need to go in and provide undergraduate education. We are helping at the graduate level, and we are helping by really building partnerships with companies both within Maine, but also helping to bring companies into Maine because of the research expertise that we have. So part of what the RU Institute does is it works with a plethora of companies who have their headquarters in Maine to go deep into those companies to really understand with them and co-create a whole set of learning experiences that can be any length in time. It could be a 4-week opportunity. It could be a 6-week. And then we sequence them to make sure that they can lead to credentials or to degrees so that there's no one-off experience for any of the employees that are engaged with us. So then as we're doing that and we're learning deeply about the needs in lots of the ways that Scott described, we are also offering master's programs that integrate all of that learning into them so that we are helping those companies build their future talent pipeline while also helping them to move their current employees into the next generation of digitization, of tech transformation, of management skills, because that's what we understand the need of the Maine economy to be. We've built a whole new center on experiential AI, which most rural communities badly need. Maine is very much a rural state. That allows us to attract other companies into Maine because they know that there's a resource and a talent pipeline of students who are going to be coming out with deep expertise in tech and AI that can also connect to the economy. So it's this really wonderful example of a university taking what it can do well, listening deeply to the community and to its partners, whether they're corporate or the state, and really trying to co-design what the learning experience is going to be. We've got a bunch of other examples similar to that, but let me stop there. We can open it up, bring it back. I'm happy to talk about some of the other things we do, some more lightweight, some longer, related to working with community colleges and building out community college pathways for our local communities. But it's all done in service of our community partners and understanding that to have impact in the world, we have to have a social contract with those with whom we are co-designing and living with. Thank you.
So, though I hesitate to mention the pandemic because we're all sick of it at this point and so everybody suffered from it, there have been some positives that have come through it. And Amy, can you talk a bit about how the pandemic has impacted CMU and its approach to program design. How has it expanded your idea of what's possible? I think you have a really interesting initiative with national laboratories that you have underway. Can you talk a bit about that?
Sure. So we've always had a lot of online learning and remote connections to our various locations. But I think what the pandemic did was really allow our faculty, staff, and students to think about education and what that means and partnering in education in new ways. At the very fundamental level, one thing that I was excited to see opening was much more of remote course modality enabled greater innovation across institutions, not just geographically located institutions, but the opportunity to capture and utilize expertise instead of all of us duplicating or maybe not even being able to offer some fields. This opened up new ways in which we could partner with other higher ed institutions. The other thing that we saw a great deal of growth at Carnegie Mellon was an interest in modular educational offerings. And we've had more than a decade of micro classes where they're often in a very short term, a small number of units in a particular topic area. But we saw a demand and an interest in broadening micro courses, as well as expanding a range of micro credentials, some of which could be stackable. And I know many others on the panel have been in this space, but this is an area where there's a lot of distinctive opportunities, I think, not just for individual institutions, but across broader collaboration. So time and place started to change for us, and particularly in the doctoral realm, where much of what we've been talking about has been in the traditional academic settings of undergrad and professional masters, we have seen over the years a growing interest in embedding students in the corporate environment as part of their doctoral training. And that could be through just sponsored projects. We've seen actually a number of companies set up shop in Pittsburgh as a way to have access to this talent. But during the pandemic, we saw that students could in fact be taken up by laboratories and other areas for continuity of their projects. And that opened up a new realm of ways in which we can think about embedded research collaborations and cross collaborative teams, whether that's corporate, government, national labs, or international locations. One final example I want to highlight. We have been partnering with an alumni startup group that is growing in the ways in which automated cloud science can take place. And we've been exploring how this could be used not just to advance our research initiatives at Carnegie Mellon, but also our educational preparation for the future of science. And the pandemic gave us the opportunity to really catalyze and accelerate our offerings, to engage more students who were very interested in sort of how could this enable their research and their educational training. And we saw the ability to stand up and are working right now on the first academic cloud lab. So it really did think about ways in which we can really change how we educate and how we do our research in science. So those are some examples of how we saw some of the positives coming out of the pandemic, really building on what we were doing, but catalyzing it and broadening it to broader access.
Thank you. So one of the real challenges from the pandemic is that it affected retention rates even more. A lot of kids had to drop out. There were family financial struggles and so on. So Kim, one of the really important programs that ASU has underway is ASU Local. Can you talk about this? It's a community-based education initiative and it has many tentacles. Can you give an idea of what you're trying to do through it and how you think it also could benefit underserved communities? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute.
In good company. ASU Local is really born from I would say, the heart of serving a community need. It was really in reaction to a community need that it was designed. I'll step back for a second into my past teacher hat. I worked in Title I schools for most of my career, mostly serving Latinx and Black students. One thing that I saw frequently is this idea that you have to go away to find success. And I was one of them who said to the world, all my students, go away, find success, go to four-year college. It wasn't until much later in my life, after watching my students go away and then coming back and feeling like failures, that I realized that narrative actually didn't match what they wanted all the time, nor what was best for them and their families. And it really was underlying a narrative that said your community isn't good enough, so you must leave your community, rather than thinking about how you can add and benefit your community. And so ASU Local was really born from the idea that students in their communities can have a place to go. It doesn't mean that some students don't want to go away, nor should they not have that opportunity. They absolutely should. But that there are many students that want to stay in their community, attend a four-year university. That means something to them. And right now they don't have that opportunity for lots of different reasons. It might be that their local four-year university doesn't have space. It might be that they don't have a local four-year university and they have to go away, such as the case with our Yuma location. So for whatever those reasons are, we really thought about ASU Local as a way to embed a four-year university within a community. And Constance, you spoke about partnerships. This to us is really a partnership work. We partner with a local community organization, the schools in the community colleges in the community, and think about what is the holistic solution that they need. And then we build an ASU Local. The hallmarks of the ASU Local are not just that you get a degree, but that it's a small, tight-knit community or program. You have a coach that's there for you no matter what. They're your first point of contact. You don't have to go find XYZ office. That office is there for you because you have your coach who will direct you and will be there for you right from the start. Everything that we do is around how to connect those students and learners to the network that is in their community. What are the local opportunities for careers? It was also mentioned earlier, this idea that all students get the actual opportunity with the career. And that's really important because so often I think programs say things like, we offer internships for our students, and then 2 or 3 students go and do that internship. Great, but that's not really going to change how students and learners get access at scale. So thinking about the type of consultancies and project-based experiences that every single student in the program can do. And then we really close that out with a sense of community and holistic wraparound supports for folks when life just isn't going quite as they might hope. And they're in that stage where they're thinking about either dropping out or things, or lots of different things. There are real humans right there for them that can help them navigate all those life challenges. So it's really a tight-knit space. And right now we have locations in Hawaii, Yuma, Arizona, Los Angeles, and Washington, DC, each with a community partner who has asked us to come in and help solve a problem with them.
Thank you, Kim. Scott, I'd actually like to ask you 2 questions. There's an audience question that came in tied to Career Academy, and then I'd like to go to a second question, if you don't mind. We were asked, does Career Academy intend to add additional programs for course equivalency, in the near term, in the next year or so? And do you expect any graduate level designations?
Yeah, good question. So we're really looking to expand out. This is a big area of focus for us. We've got about 20 job roles, 20 industry micro-credentials now. We're hoping we'll have 50 within the year. So we're really looking to build these out. I think partly what the question is alluding to, maybe half of the Career Academy certificates now actually have ACE credit recommendation. So students can, if they do this, and the university, right, it's up to the university. If the university allows it, they can actually get credit and stack these into other programs. We are looking, that's a big focus for us. We're also looking at ECTS credit for Europe. That's a similar thing there. So we are looking for more ways that we can make the courses easier to stack into university curriculum. I don't know if I have a timeline because a lot of that depends on our partners too. As far as graduate level, many of the ACE recommendation is at graduate level. So it's not unusual to see a certificate where it might be 9 units of undergrad and 3 units of grad, or 6 and 6 or something like that. So many of them do. We're really focused on entry level. We call these entry level gateway, which means they have to be both entry level, something a recent grad can do, but also a gateway that will lead to more, right? More things if the student is able to do it. So that maybe limits us a little bit to the undergrad space for most of it, but certainly we're, some of the credits that come with the courses are at the graduate level.
It's great. And I'd like to, Scott, to pick up quickly on the retention issue. So you have students that drop out because of money or other reasons, or family requirements. And Coursera has been working with a couple of colleges, I believe, to try to figure out a way to keep these students engaged so that when they are ready to come back, they haven't sort of lost their connection to their school. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. And then this is really going back. I mean, the pandemic was traumatic for a lot of students. Real life really got in the way, and a lot of students had to drop out or defer their enrollment. And so we had a few universities. There's one that I believe I can name, Boise State, where they really wanted to do something about it. And they created something they call the Bronco Gap Year program. And this was intended for the students who maybe couldn't come in when they wanted to, or they had to take a year off, to keep engaged with the university, to make it more likely that they would be able to come back in the fold when life was able to allow them to do that. And so this program, I think it's really innovative. They paired each of these students with a faculty mentor who would help them sort of build a customized learning program, like a foundation maybe program for students who are coming in, maybe a more advanced program for students who needed to take a year off in the middle. And Coursera content was part of that, right? Because we have this diverse content. We have these top corporate partners, but also top universities producing content. We have a lot of really great content. And so these, Boise State, they were able to use this content as part of that program, so students could engage and continue to learn at their own pace, at their own time, even if they couldn't, engage in the full sort of university student experience. And because we have ACE credit recommendation for many of these courses, they were able to also apply some of those credits, and in many cases, when they were able to come back and rematriculate toward their program. So it ended up being I think it was a great program for the students who came back. 75% of them self-reported that they probably wouldn't have come back if it hadn't been for this program keeping them engaged, because it's really hard to come back when you stop completely. It's much easier to come back if you're able to stay engaged, at least in some manner. So yeah, it was, and we have other universities doing similar programs with us as well.
That's great, thank you. So Connie, I think the whole panel has kind of talked around a very important issue, which is that we talk about training people for their first job and stackable credentials and so on. But I think you all have emphasized the central role of the university to prepare somebody for life, that students may have multiple careers, and that the skills that they're learning can apply to teach them how their skills and abilities and what they've learned can apply to different areas. And I'd like you, Connie, to just reflect for a moment on how experiential learning and new learning models is affecting how professors approach their courses. I think there's an interesting story you told me about an anthropology professor and what she learned with her students. But I think it captures a theme about preparing students to be flexible through their lives, and that the skills just don't, if a job goes away in 7 years, they're still okay. They still have the skills to go to a next job or a related career. So can you talk a bit about that? Off mute though.
Slow learner here, sorry. So we at Northeastern, we talk about it in terms of contextual agility, that we want our students when they leave us, although we intend for them never to leave us as lifelong learners, but that they are constantly building the ability. In the learning sciences, it's referred to as far transfer, that if I can learn something in one context, I can actually understand how to apply it in another context. And whether that's across a global context, across a variety of different work experiences, which is why we want them doing 2 or 3 co-ops, among other things, and that they're really understanding the context of the classroom and what they're learning across the classroom and the work experience to be a continuation of a variety of different contexts. So, and quite frankly, that's hard for faculty. We have professors of practice, we have research faculty, we have a plethora of different folks who are engaged with students as faculty. And part of what's been true for us is that we learn as much from our students as they learn from us. And that is our students are going out either on co-op, doing an apprenticeship, doing a whole set of experiences out in the world. They come back to us and they're a conduit for also us understanding as our faculty the kinds of things that are constantly changing in the world. And it becomes a bit of a forcing function for faculty. If you've got students who are out doing co-op, working for 6 months and coming back and saying, how is my anthropology class relevant to anything that I'm doing out in the world? Help me build those connections. And so we do that in a variety of ways. One is similar to Scott's program, we have a thing called XN. We have a whole team that is working with companies to get those projects that we can then integrate into courses. And so we've got over 11,000 of those actually going this year of faculty who are working with a corporate mentor. So we pull the project from the company. There's usually someone from the company who will also come into the class and be a mentor. And students will work on those projects with and for the company while it's integrated into the class that the faculty is teaching. And so we do that across all of our courses. We've also had faculty have lots of conversations. When you think just about anthropology, a student comes off of a software design or a computer science co-op or is thinking about that for the future. One of our anthropology professors was having a conversation with her, and it was this whole conversation about what is the relationship between anthropology and the skills of an anthropologist in UI UX. How do you begin to take what has been our core disciplinary knowledge and really think about it in terms of the 21st century? And so those kinds of conversations and that kind of work from our faculty both comes because they're in constant conversation with students from whom they're learning, because we learn as much from them as they do from us, and because they're working with companies and working on our XN projects to embed them throughout their courses. So part of my job and what's a joy about it is that it is this constant iteration of how we teach, what we teach, how we engage partners, and how we learn from our students as we move them forward. And I think that's one of the core things that's, I would argue, having been a former tenured faculty person, that is really quite different about where we are in the world in higher ed, is this notion that we're having to iterate constantly. We're having to iterate at the level of our courses, at the level of our projects, at the level of our partnerships, which requires a kind of agility from our universities that I think I'm hearing from all of us, that our universities are really, really becoming skilled at in order to become that institution that's a good partner for Coursera, a good partner for communities, and a good partner for companies.
Thank you. We actually have gotten some questions on sort of K through 12. And you all actually are doing a lot for high school students, foundational learning, earned admission. So I just would like to take we only have a few minutes left, and I'd like to give you each a chance to talk about that. Amy, can you give your perspective on there's a concern for underserved populations and having access to some of these courses. Is there any interest at CMU or any effort right now to develop high school courses that are available online that could be accessible at no cost or low cost for underserved populations?
Yes, and again, one of the striking examples is through our Open Learning Initiative known as OLI, but CMU actually has a whole portfolio of offerings in that domain on that platform, and use an approach to access that would allow independent learners as well as facilitated learners. One of the things we saw that was particularly in demand at the high school level during the pandemic was our virtual chemistry laboratory suite that is available. And we saw many teachers and students eager to be able to continue their laboratory instruction, but unable to do that in an in-person modality. So that's one example that is available at our OLL site. The other thing that I would say is that we've been involved in K through 12 outreach a great deal, but one that I want to highlight is the CS Academy. And this is really looking at how to create real partnerships, not just broadening access to CS preparation for the students themselves, but by equipping and engaging high school teachers around the world in a community of tools, education, and support that really can be transformational. This project started with 14 high school partners and 400 students in the spring of 2018, and its current state is now in 1,500 partner schools in 30 countries and engaging 40,000 students and their teachers, all for free. So this isn't just saying, here, go take this class, but it's an entire curricular set and a pathway of classes that tries to address some of what we've heard about the needs in our communities and the opportunity gaps where many of our rural school districts just cannot meet that demand. But this is actually trying to meet that by empowering the districts and the educators. And we're very excited about that as one example of many, but one that's really seeing a great deal of uptake and directly related to the needs of these future workers at all skill levels in the digital future.
Thank you. Kim, at ASU, you have a pretty robust earned admission program for students who are wouldn't ordinarily be able to get into the university, but you're finding different paths. Can you give us a brief overview of that? Oh, off mute.
My goodness. So I think at the heart of that is our universal learner courses, which are openly accessible college courses that anybody in the world can take. They can stack them into pathways, and they can do lots of exciting things with them. We have over 300 high school partners, for example, across the country who use those as their concurrent enrollment solution, which is very exciting. It's the way that we've really helped high schools, and high schools have helped us get students ready and prepared for college and given them access to college credits, which are a currency to both get into college as well as get success in college. And a key part of that, though, is if you think about the traditional rules of higher ed, if you take a college course in high school, you have to, typically have to pay, and you have to transcript the course, whether or not you find success in it. And two of the important things that we've done in this exploratory space for students, for high schoolers, as well as for earned admissions, is saying that you don't have to pay unless you pass for the class. You just pay a $25 entry fee. And unless you pass the class, you don't have to pay. But even more importantly, I think, is you don't have to transcript the course. Why do you have to transcript the course if you don't pass it, right? That just harms students and encourages them not to take a risk. So really allowing them to try college, no matter where they are in their life, throughout their path of lifelong learning, and ensuring that they don't feel that they've failed for trying. And I think the other key part of this for us is, let's imagine that you are 28, you maybe didn't do so great in high school, and you now have been working for 8 years, you're kicking butt, taking names, and you want to have a college degree. Well, your college that you typically go to looks back at your high school work and says, I'm sorry, you're not ready, which is just really unfortunate. Because you are ready, you've proven you're ready, you've really risen to the occasion. So what we've created is an earned admissions pathway. We don't look at anything else you've done. We only look at your performance in these 4 courses that you've taken with us in these universal learner courses. And that performance will allow you to earn your way into ASU. And I think it's just a whole new take on, and what I think is a way to get rid of an archaic system. And I encourage all the universities to think about things like that.
That's great, Kim. Thanks. Scott, final a question to you on foundational learning, picking up on Kim's point, is sometimes students just haven't had access to additional skills that they need to succeed in college. Can you talk about what you're trying to do at Coursera to provide some opportunities to build foundational learning?
Yeah, and I think Kim is absolutely right about this like performance, we call performance-based admissions, where maybe a student, they don't have the background, maybe they, and schools are moving away from SAT. It's really like, you don't want to reject a student, but can we give them an alternate pathway to demonstrate their performance that will, we have programs like that we do with universities. We do stuff with high schools where we're helping to develop skills, and we do stuff with graduate programs as well, where we're really helping with those foundational, like if a student's coming at an MBA level, but they don't have a business background, how do they bridge that gap? So we have a variety of programs, but I did want to, as just one closing thing, I love something Constance said about this anthropology and UI UX. And my kind of closing thought is, one of the things I've come to realize talking to companies, talking to universities, the world is inherently multidisciplinary, right? If you think about these things like AI, blockchain, these have engineering, they have business, they have legal, public policy, ethical, they don't span one, but universities still tend to be single disciplinary structured. And I think to me, that's a huge challenge that we as educators have to solve, is how do we rise to this multidisciplinary world when we tend to be siloed and structured in single disciplinary academic departments. So that would be my closing thought. Thank you.
Oh, that's great. I mean, Kim, Amy, and Constance, in the minute and a half we have left, you each want to just offer, build on what Scott said, or just a quick additional thought.
I will just add that I have been really encouraged to hear so much alignment of what all of us are doing. And I hope that the conversations and collaborations can continue to expand and grow, because we can learn from each other. And I think that the momentum that we learned during the pandemic can actually help us to create a new future where we are all serving all students to the best of our ability. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks. Kim?
Yeah, similarly, I've been so inspired by hearing a shared vision across. And I think oftentimes with universities, there's this idea of scarcity, scarcity of students, scarcity of learners. We know that's not true. There are tens of millions of people who need access to more education. And so all ships rise if we're all thinking this way. So really appreciate that so many intelligent, thoughtful humans are taking the challenge on.
Connie?
Yeah, thanks. And Liz, I just wanted to say thank you for bringing us all together, because I think we're in a really important moment post-COVID, and with all the challenges that are facing the world right now, that is really calling higher ed to figure out how to become interdisciplinary and how to do that by learning from each other. And I really deeply appreciate that you've brought us all together to start this conversation, and I'm looking forward to continuing it.
Well, I can tell you that I'm trying to think of ways to justify re-enrolling in all your institutions and new degree programs I can try out. Doctors Amy Burkert, Connie Yall, Scott Shireman, and Kim Merritt, thank you for a really enlightening discussion. And thanks to the audience for tuning in. If you'd like to learn more about upcoming US News events, you can find them at usnews.com/events. Thank you all.